Good morning, everyone. So, this week's topic is moving from uncertainty to insight. And I want to start this theme by approaching a reality. And that reality is that we live in an unpredictable world. We, uh, we simply do not know what will even happen tomorrow. We live in a world that's not only unpredictable, but is ever changing. And so when we talk about having stability, it's really an elusive idea because a lot of times what we consider to be stable ends up not being ultimate stability anyway. Doesn't mean we shouldn't lean into it. For instance, let's say you have a dear friend and you've been friends for so long that you know what you can expect. And with that, uh, you lean into each other with these knowings, this expectation. I know if I call, they're going to call me back the same day. I know there are certain things that you can rely upon. And then all of a sudden, one day, that person simply doesn't act in the way that you've come to know or depend upon. That can be a real shakeup. It can leave you feeling ungrounded, worried, uncertain, upset, insecure, angry. It could evoke all sorts of uncomfortable responses. And that's really very normal and fair. Human psychology would teach us that to go through the loss of what we could rely upon is a form of trauma. And so you put that beside that reality, and that reality happens a lot for all of us. Put that beside the ultimate reality that the world is always changing, that what is stable is not what is of the 3D dimensions, that in this 3D dimension, everything is changing. Then how can you live in an unpredictable world? And all of the human cycles have periods where there's greater destruction and less destruction, greater breakdown, less breakdown. Building up, things seem to be flourishing, breakdown of that. We have these cycles that happen. So, how do you live in an unpredictable world? And not just in the things that you can see are breaking down and observe or hear on the news or building up, but even living in the reality that at any moment something cataclysmic could happen, or or uh, certain elements in nature that abide by natural laws all of a sudden might go haywire. We live in that degree of unpredictability, but most of it we don't face fully. Most of it we don't, otherwise, we could be very consumed with anxiety. Most of it we don't open our whole selves and our hearts to experience that it's just as probable as something will go haywire as it will act as we hope it will act. But we don't go there because we have an internal regulating system that knows that what is best to do is to rely upon the internal strength and rely upon what you do know. So that's a gift we've been given with our nervous system and our emotional regulation systems. But it doesn't lessen the reality that we live in an unpredictable. The call is to care with all our hearts and to be completely detached of whatever happens. And detached doesn't mean that you don't care if you go through loss or people suffer or the environment is hurt. But you're detached in that you know your place. You know your place in these things. And your place is that you are both all powerful and only an individual, meaning you are a one pattern in a multi-patterned universe. And that you that is this one pattern is not God, and everything else is your creation. You have the God essence, and you are part of creation that is all of God. But that's what that kind of detachment is that you're willing to give your all. You're willing to be touched, not be insulated, not be defensive, not be bypassing, that you allow yourself to be touched and and you are not undone in being touched. That's quite profound, right? That's quite profound. I'm going to share with you two stories from my own life. One of them I've used before, so if you've been with me a while, you've probably heard it, but it's relevant here to set the context for our practice. I think I even share in my book, my first book. I experienced when I was in the monastery. You've got to remember when I entered the monastery, I was on fire. This wasn't that I was seeking more of something wonderful or seeking to find something I hadn't found. I was completely consumed, on fire. God was making love with me just about every day. It was very illuminative period in my life. And so being in the monastery was simply saying yes to that, not that experience, not that I would have ecstatic states all my life, but saying yes to the one that I was communing with and desiring to be solely living in that one presence. And there came a time, it was sometime when I was in formation, so the first 4.5 years. I want to say it was in the first 2 years, but I could be wrong on that. And every morning we would prostrate on our rooms were called cells, and we would prostrate. There were prayers and psalms we would say before we began our day. Then we get up, get dressed, and go to communal prayer and chant. And I generally bypassed all the words because I would find that when I would prostrate, I would just drop into a level of presence that was enough. And I would usually say, which I'm sure my superiors would not have been happy, I would usually say, "Oh God, I say in the silence all the prayers that are supposed to be said out loud right now," or something like that. So I did my duty part of it all. And then I could just be in the communing in the silence and release, which is really the object of the prayer that we were doing. And one of these times, my cells began vibrating in such a way that I experienced the primordial silence. I was vibrating, and I think in my vibrating, in all the cells vibrating, I became conscious that all reality is, in a sense, somewhat literally, somewhat figuratively, vibrating into being at every moment. And it plunged me into an experience of silence that I still walk in today. It was one of these shifts that has never changed. And it's probably the silence, which is just used as a placeholder word for what we don't know. It's probably the one thing that we can say is certain, that there is a vibrating quality that's eternal, becoming in form, that's primordial, manifesting. And that in that field, there is a container of all being held and a potentiality of anything happen. And that's where you get what? You get miracles. That's why I think there's such a great blessing in people like Joe Dispenza and others that are helping people get into the energy of miracles instead of the energy of despair. And so, living in an unpredictable world, we recognize that we too are unpredictable. And at any moment, we might shift completely into something we barely even recognize. And there's data and research that can even break down the reality of this in the 3D part. That's how we live in an unpredictable world. We open ourselves up to walking in and as this silence more and more and more. And because this silence is the vibrating or the pulsing of all things, if we are doing it in a healthy way, we will find ourselves remaining open and defenseless to being touched by all things, yet never being destroyed or shaken. That's what we're talking about there. And because it is that in which we are becoming and being, it's always accessible to us. And there are times that we taste it a little, and there are times that we taste it more consistently. And there are times that it has this color and texture, and there are times it has a different color and texture. I remember one time I had a really lovely, I've had a lot of Christ experiences, but this one I'm going to share with you is a Christ experience that had a certain texture to it. And I was a minister in a church, and I was sitting there during, I don't know if it was one of the liturgies or it was just a contemplative time. And I began, my awareness awakened that I was vibrating Christ, that I felt full, delicious, this vibrating, I was vibrating Christ. And as I looked around, all the human beings were vibrating Christ. It let me get a glimpse of them because of my inner state. I saw reality as it is because of my inner state. So we move into insight. We move from the uncertainty that shakes us to insight in the unpredictability in the world. And I'm going to see if I can share a screen with you. Yeah, here we go. Okay. So I have alluded to this example in some of my workshops. And this is in the book Kali Rising by Rudy Ballantyne. And in it, he's exploring the complexity of the phrase yin and yang, that all the world is yin and yang. And certainly, yeah, I'm sure you can relate that in our society, like most, we have reduced it to almost an unmanageable, unrecognizable set of qualities. And he was pointing out that it's way, way more nuanced than just this masculine, feminine, and the feminine being a certain thing and the masculine being a certain thing. That it's much more what you're looking at here. And he said, even this falls short. And what he does is he has a picture where the yin yang symbol, you can see that these four aspects, he says, that make up all creation, they sit like uh, like two lines crossing each other. So all reality is responding and being in relationship in that way. And that on the upper left, the yin masculine is directly connected with the yang feminine, and the yang masculine with the yin feminine. That they're ends of a pole, and they can't that the element can't flourish without the other. Now, on the other pole, the elements can flourish without the the other pole, but it can't flourish without the elements on the pole. However, to have a healthy society, all of them coexist and support each other. And I'm sharing this here because I know that many people that I'm working with are feeling that the world is crumbling around them. And in order to step into this space that I'm inviting you to open to really being interpenetrated in the silence, I want to give this perspective on reality so that you might say, well, in my present reality, what is in balance? What is out of balance? What is coming forward strongly because it's been sublimated? What is needing to happen for new birth? Because the cycle of birth, which is the Kali cycle, and book was Kali Rising, is always happening. Destruction is never the final say. It's only the destruction of something. So the yin masculine, which has largely been sublimated, this is the aspect within ourselves that recognize self-generating source, that has a all the power is held, that nothing is lost, that it's all held in sacred containment. It is the way of being structured where you are untouchable and stable. And at the same time, it gives you the strength to both provide and protect. On that same pole is the yang feminine, and probably out of all of them, that's the scariest. And that's where we oftentimes get the Durga Kali. It's that yang feminine. Pushing and birthing, spark of creation, transformation, power of expression. All of these stir the waters, don't they? They are change embodied. Change embodied. What would it be like if we phrased what is crumbling as being going through the process of transformation so that new creation can be birthed? What if we framed it that way? If we did, how might that influence our inner state or our external actions? And then on the opposite, or the other ring, the other pole, you've got the yang masculine, which is largely what masculinity got reduced to starting in about 3000 BC, that driven part of our personality, that the penetrating, that they're at it, that's the conquering. That's what power was considered. If I can conquer you, I'm powerful. Complete misuse of the word power. Each of these, all four of them, are power. But that's what it got reduced to. And then on the pole was the yin feminine, right? And oftentimes women in gender got reduced to this. You're a great woman if you are receptive, if you are always nurturing and nourishing, if you're always incubating, if you fill up, if you're able to just be the space in which everything happens, not the structural part that holds boundaries necessarily. So you're not given the role of being an authority or a director, but the one that, oh, I can always go there because I'm unconditionally accepted. Great power. People have gone through great healing when they encounter people with those qualities. But in reducing it, what happens? You disallow, in reducing to any of these, you disallow the powers of all the other ones. It became behind every great man, there's a great woman, right? You get that. And what Rudy points out is in the Eastern understanding that this axis, the penetration receiving one, that became the predominant male female way of relating when weapons and power and conquering lands became important. He says that became uh, it was the stabilizing axis, which is true in Eastern philosophy. The world is stable when that is in balance. It also began being seen as the transformation axis, which is the other one, the protection and birthing one. It became seen as that one as well, because if the yang masculine was in charge and conquering things, power, that was seen as what? Gaining, birthing, transformation, misuse of those concepts. So I give this to you because there's a lot of imbalance in the world. And you could, if you wish, to work and release and surrender and practice being in the silence, you could then begin to perceive with insight what is breaking down, what is stirring for the sake of new life. And let your actions being your thoughts as well, your actions being where you fuel your feelings. Let this be at the service of what you perceive when you open up to reality on these levels. On these levels. So that's just a little something for you. And again, if you've seen that diagram, because I do bring it into I don't bring it in to everything I do, but I do bring it into a lot of things that I lead that are more like retreat or long series. What I'd like to do today, based on the story I told you about vibrating Christ and then literally feeling and witnessing, that's a better word, witnessing everyone else vibrating Christ. And I was taken with it. The delight in that textural moment was beyond words. In service of that, to open up this topic for you, I want to do a mantra that we definitely do every time I do a series, because I can't get away from it. It's so good. It's so and if you forget what this means, it means I am that. I am that. What would it be like if we said I am that to everything that makes us uncomfortable in our world right now? We would find insight. That's one of the fruits that would happen. So I am that. And I've mentioned that it's got a polarity of qualities. It's got the numerical representations. It's got a human and a divine. It's got a cooling and a heating. It's got a masculine and a feminine. So it's good for opening up to aspects of ourself that are from that diagram that I just shared. All right. So let's jump into our practice. I invite you to close your eyes. And breathe in and breathe out. And breathe in and breathe out. And breathe in and breathe out. And on the next inhale, breathe in, hold it, and exhale. And join our mantra as you're able. The soul is on the inhale, the hum is on the exhale. And as you listen to me, imitate how I do it. One more inhale. And one more exhale. Ah. 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 Six. As we bring this session to a close, if you wish, stay with the soul hum on your own once this recording and our time together stops. Continuing with rounds to open yourself to truly to experience I am that. I am. Bring your palms together in front of your heart. To open your eyes with namaste. Namaste, my friend.